All right, let's dive into this pile of research you've given me on the social brain. I'm really curious what we can dig up here. Looks like you've been exploring how our brains are wired for connection and what that actually means for us day to day.
Well, even for me, as an expert, it's a topic that never stops surprising me. We'll be looking at some truly surprising things about how deeply ingrained this social drive is and how it affects us in ways we might not realize.
Yeah, right off the bat, these sources are making it clear how essential social connection really is. Like, it's not just about feeling good. Our brains seem to treat it as a fundamental need, just like food and water.
Yeah, think about it. For our ancestors, strong social bonds were vital for survival. Protection, sharing resources, raising kids. Those who were connected, well, they thrived. And that urge, it's still hardwired into us today.
The research really hammers this home. One study I saw found that just telling people they were more likely to end up alone in the future actually made them do worse on a cognitive test.
And get this, it wasn't even like a test of social skills. It was a general cognitive test. But just hinting at future isolation was enough to mess with their thinking. It really shows that deep link between our social needs and our ability to think.
Makes you wonder if we're underestimating how much our social lives actually affect our ability to think straight.
Hmm.
Like there are times I feel all over the place if I haven't had enough interaction.
You've hit on a really important point. This actually takes us to another fascinating finding. The way our brains handle social pain and pleasure is incredibly similar to how they handle physical pain and pleasure.
Yeah, this is where things got really interesting for me. There was a study where women were given like painful stimuli, and when they held their partner's hand, they said it hurt less. But here's the kicker. Seeing a picture of their partner was even better at reducing the pain. It's almost like our brains find comfort and connection, even if it's just symbolic.
It really changes how we think about support. That mental image, that reminder of the bond can be incredibly powerful. It triggers the brain's reward system and helps ease distress.
So maybe those little social snacks we grab throughout the day, like checking in with friends online or looking at pictures, maybe they're more important than we realize. They might be giving our brains that little reward boost, even if it's not a full-on face-to-face thing.
It's a really interesting area for research, especially as we depend more and more on tech to connect. But this ability to find comfort in those cues, even symbolic ones, shows just how complex our brains are at understanding the social world. And this leads us to the idea of mindreading, or what researchers call mentalizing.
Right. The sources talk about this mentalizing system that's constantly working in the background, even when we're not actively thinking about other people. It's like we have this dedicated system for figuring out what others are thinking and feeling.
What's amazing is that even during downtime, when we're daydreaming or even sleeping, this system just kicks in. Our brains are constantly trying to decode the social world, even when we're not directly engaged with it.
Makes sense when you think about how much time we spend thinking about other people, their motivations, their intentions, whether they like us or not. No wonder our brains are working overtime on this.
Yeah, and this ability to understand others, to predict their actions, it's crucial for navigating our social lives. But it also plays a huge role in how we learn and remember things. This is where social encoding comes in.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The research talk about how encoding information socially, like we're going to teach it to someone else, actually leads to much better memory than just trying to cram facts.
It goes beyond just memorizing. When we get ready to teach something, we have to organize that info clearly and logically. We're basically thinking about how to make it understandable and interesting for someone else.
So next time I'm trying to learn something new, I should pretend I'm teaching it to someone. Maybe even explain it out loud to an imaginary student.
It's simple but effective, and it taps into that natural social drive to share knowledge, to connect with others through information.
Speaking of connecting with others, the research goes deep on how the social brain plays out in the workplace. And it's not just about being people savvy. It goes way deeper.
Definitely. The sources talk about how grasping social motivation can actually transform a workplace. They point to this model called SCAR-F, which stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness.
That scarf model really jumped out at me. It says these social elements are major drivers of behavior, often more so than money. There was a story about salespeople who gave up like thousands in commission just to get recognition and status. They wanted to feel valued and respected by their team.
I'm curious, what stood out to you most about SCARF? Was there one element you connected with based on your own experiences at work?
The autonomy part really resonated with me. I know I'm way more motivated when I have some say in how I approach my work. And that feeling of being part of a team, that relatedness, that's really key too.
It is interesting how those needs for autonomy and relatedness can sometimes feel like they clash, yet they're both so crucial for a fulfilling work environment. And this leads us to another area where the social brain is at the center: education.
Especially during those teenage years, when fitting in feels like everything, that need to belong can have a huge impact on learning.
Absolutely. The research points to a dip in academic performance during junior high. And it's not just about hormones and teenage angst. These students are facing a whole new social landscape. Trying to figure out where they fit, it can be incredibly distracting.
There's a powerful study they mention showing that a simple intervention focused on belonging actually led to lasting improvements in GPA for African American college students. It highlights how feeling like you belong can really boost academic motivation and success.
It makes you wonder how much we're missing the boat on the power of the social brain in traditional education. Could we be doing more to create learning environments that really foster that sense of belonging and connection?
It takes me back to my own junior high days. Remember that feeling, that pressure to fit in? It definitely affected how well I could focus on schoolwork. It's fascinating to think how we could use these insights to improve education for students today.
Well, one of the most exciting areas of research is this idea of actually training the social brain, the notion that it's not fixed, but something we can develop and strengthen.
Wait, you mean we can train our social brains like we train our muscles at the gym?
That's exactly what the research suggests. For years, we thought traits like intelligence and self-control were set in stone. But now we're finding that through targeted training, we can actually boost these abilities. And that includes our social skills.
Okay, this is where it gets mind-blowing. Tell me more about this social brain training. What does it look like? What kind of results are we talking about?
Well, there are lots of approaches, but one study really grabbed my attention. They found that training motor self-control, like resisting the urge to press a button, actually led to improvements in emotion regulation.
Hold on. So practicing physical self-control can make us better at managing our emotions? That's wild. It's like our brains learn to apply that same self-control to different areas of our lives.
Exactly. And it opens up so many possibilities. Imagine a future where we incorporate these social brain exercises into our daily routines, just like hitting the gym to work out our bodies.
That's a fascinating idea. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's break this down a bit. What exactly does social brain training involve? And what kinds of skills can we realistically expect to improve?
Well, it's still a pretty new field, but early results look promising. Social brain training can involve all sorts of activities, from practicing mindfulness and trying to see things from others' perspectives to actually doing simulated social interactions. And research shows these exercises can actually make you better at empathy, at regulating your emotions, even reading social cues.
This is giving me a whole new way to think about personal growth. We often get so caught up in productivity and skills, but maybe we should be focusing on our social brains too.
Couldn't agree more. It's like we've been overlooking this essential part of ourselves. But it goes beyond personal growth. Understanding the social brain also helps us see those bigger societal trends, especially when we talk about happiness and well-being.
Right, the research digs into how our understanding of the social brain challenges what we think makes us happy.
For ages, we've put so much emphasis on money, material wealth as the key to happiness, but the data tells a different story. Like, yeah, having basic needs met is essential, but once you hit a certain income level, it's actually social factors, close relationships, a sense of belonging that have a much bigger impact on how happy we are overall.
And they even put a dollar amount on these social things. One study I saw said that having a close friend you see regularly is like getting an extra $100,000 a year. And get this, seeing your neighbors regularly, that's like a $60,000 raise.
It's crazy, right? We chase money, thinking it's the path to happiness, but all along, these connections are giving us a similar boost, often without us even realizing it.
So maybe it's time we stopped obsessing over those external signs of success and started investing more in our social lives. But the research also points to some, well, worrisome trends. Are we actually becoming less connected as a society, even with all this technology to help us stay in touch?
It does seem that way, sadly. Over the last few decades, we've seen a drop in marriage rates, less involvement in social groups, even fewer people having guests over to their homes.
And the decline in close friends is especially alarming. The research mentions one study where the most common number of close friends people listed in 2004 was 0. That's a huge change from like 1985, where people said they had an average of 3 close friends.
Yeah, it's a sobering stat, and it begs the question, how do we turn this around? If connection is so vital to our well-being, how do we create more of it in a world that feels increasingly isolating?
The research suggests some key things. Being more intentional about making time for friends, joining social groups, even just making an effort to connect with neighbors. But what about when we're alone? Is there anything we can do to meet those social needs, even without real-life interaction?
That's where social snacking comes in. It's about those little things we do to feel connected, even when we're by ourselves. Think about looking at pictures of people you love, remembering happy times, or even watching a favorite TV show with characters you relate to.
It's like those snippets give us a quick shot of dopamine, tapping into those same reward pathways as actual connection. And it makes me think about social media. Is that a form of social snacking too?
It definitely is a way to look for social interaction, even if it's virtual. The question is, how good is it at actually fulfilling those deep needs for belonging? Are those likes and comments really as satisfying as a face-to-face conversation or sharing an experience?
It's something to think about as we navigate this increasingly digital life. But shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the workplace. I'm curious about how we can apply these insights to create work environments that are more engaging and fulfilling.
Well, research suggests that many workplaces are still stuck in the past. They focus mainly on money as a reward and completely miss the power of those social motivators.
It goes back to that scarf model we talked about. Building a workplace where people feel a sense of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness,
Yeah.
that can unleash a level of motivation and engagement that traditional incentives just can't match.
Absolutely. And it doesn't always have to be about grand gestures or fancy perks. Even small changes can have a huge impact, like
Yeah.
acknowledging employees' achievements in front of everyone, giving them more control over their work, or just making sure that decisions are seen as fair and transparent.
I'm also really intrigued by the idea of bringing caregiving into the workplace. The research talks about how giving employees chances to help others can be super motivating.
Oh, there was this fascinating study with university fundraisers, the ones who got to actually meet a scholarship recipient, someone who benefited directly from their work. They spent way more time on the phone and raised significantly more money.
That's amazing. It shows that connecting employees to the impact of their work, giving them that sense of purpose, can be a powerful motivator. It really challenges the idea that work should only be about individual performance and competition.
It raises a really important question about leadership. What does it mean to be a good leader when we take into account all this knowledge about the social brain? What qualities and skills matter most in creating a work environment that thrives and feels connected?
That's a great question. And from what I've gathered from the research, it seems like the best leaders are the ones who really get and use the power of social dynamics. They're not just focused on tasks and hitting targets, but on building a workplace where people feel valued, supported, and connected to something bigger.
There's often this idea that good leaders need to be dominant and assertive. But research shows that the most successful leaders are actually those who are really good at social intelligence, those interpersonal skills. They're the ones who can build trust, get people to collaborate, and create a sense of purpose that everyone shares.
Makes you wonder if we're looking for the wrong things when we choose and develop leaders. Maybe we need to look beyond just technical skills and start valuing those who can foster a sense of community and belonging.
And it's not just about finding people who are naturally good at social stuff. We need to create a whole culture where those skills are valued, developed, and rewarded. A culture where leaders are encouraged to prioritize social connection and build those strong relationships that are so vital for individual and organizational success.
And this brings us to another really important area where understanding the social brain can make a huge difference: education. How can we create learning environments that are not only effective but also socially and emotionally enriching for students?
The research really stresses how important it is to address students' social needs, especially during those teenage years when the need to belong is so strong. We need to move away from thinking school is only about academics. We have to create spaces where students feel connected, supported, and like they're part of a community.
It makes me think about that study we discussed earlier about the drop in academic performance during junior high. It's not just about hormones and typical teenage stuff. These kids are navigating a whole new social world, and that can be incredibly distracting and stressful.
We need to stop trying to shut down those social urges and instead find ways to channel that social energy to help them learn. The research highlights some promising approaches, like including more collaborative learning, peer tutoring, and even social brain classes as part of the curriculum.
I love that idea, social brain classes. Imagine giving students the tools to understand their own social brains, to handle those complex social interactions, and to develop their empathy and social intelligence. That could be a game changer.
Exactly. It's about giving them the power to not only do well academically, but to thrive socially and emotionally, to feel connected to their classmates, their teachers, and the whole learning process. And this is where the idea of training the social brain becomes especially important.
Right, we talked earlier about actually being able to train our social skills, just like working out at the gym.
Hmm.
What would that look like in a school setting?
Well, people are exploring different methods, but one promising area is mindfulness training. By teaching kids to pay attention to their thoughts, feelings, and what they're sensing right now, we can help them develop better self-awareness and the ability to regulate their emotions.
That makes a lot of sense. And mindfulness could also help students become more aware of others' emotions and experiences, fostering more empathy and compassion. But are there other ways to train the social brain in schools?
Absolutely. Role-playing and simulations can be super effective for teaching social skills. For instance, students can practice resolving conflicts, saying what they need assertively, or handling tough social situations in a safe, controlled setting.
It's like giving them a social gym where they can work those social muscles without real-world consequences. But let's be real. Getting these kinds of things implemented in schools needs buy-in from teachers, administrators, even parents. How do we convince them that training the social brain is just as important as teaching math or science?
It's a valid point. I think it starts with highlighting the research showing the huge impact social and emotional skills have on academic success, mental health, and overall well-being.
Right. We've talked about studies showing that feeling a sense of belonging can improve grades and that training motor self-control can actually make you better at managing your emotions.
Huh.
But are there other strong arguments for social brain training?
Definitely. Studies show that strong social skills are more and more valuable in the workplace. Employers want people who can collaborate, communicate clearly, and navigate those complex social situations.
So by investing in social brain training, we're not just setting kids up for academic success, but also preparing them for success in their future jobs and personal lives. It's a win-win.
Exactly. And it's crucial to emphasize that social emotional learning isn't about replacing the usual academic subjects. It's about adding to them and making them better. By creating a learning environment that supports both intellectual and social emotional development, we can help students truly reach their full potential.
Yeah, it's like we're finally realizing that education isn't just about stuffing kids' heads with facts and figures. It's about helping them become well-rounded people who can handle the world with both smarts and heart.
Exactly. It's about moving past that purely cognitive view of learning and taking a more holistic approach, one that recognizes how interconnected our intellectual, social, and emotional selves really are.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. It's like we've been operating with this limited understanding of ourselves for so long,
Mhm.
focusing on the individual and rationality, but missing this fundamental part of our nature, our social brains.
It's like a crucial piece of the puzzle has been missing. We've zeroed in on the I and neglected the we, but the research is clear. Our social brains aren't just some add-on, they're woven into everything we do, from how we think and learn to how we find happiness and meaning.
And this missing piece, it has implications way beyond just our personal lives, right?
Yeah.
It affects how we tackle some of the biggest problems in our world today.
Think about it. So many of the issues we face, conflicts, inequality, even climate change, they're all fundamentally social problems at their core. They come from how we interact with each other and our relationship with the planet.
So are you saying if we could understand the social brain better, if we could use its power in positive ways, we might actually find better solutions to these challenges?
The potential is huge. Imagine a world where leaders were trained in social intelligence, where workplaces were designed to foster collaboration and belonging, where schools made social and emotional learning just as important as academics.
That's a pretty powerful vision. A world where we're not just chasing individual success, but aiming for collective well-being. A world where we see our interconnectedness not as a weakness, but as our greatest strength.
And it all begins with awareness, recognizing that we're not just these rational beings, we're social beings. Our need to belong is just as important as our needs for food, water, and shelter.
It's about challenging those ingrained ideas we have about human nature. Embracing the social brain with all its messiness and contradictions as a core part of who we are.
It's a shift in how we see things. Realizing that our brains are wired not just to survive, but to connect, to work together, to be compassionate, and that by understanding and nurturing this social side of ourselves, we can create a world that's more fulfilling, more fair, and in the end, more human.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. It's made us question things, broadened our understanding, and I have to say, it's left me feeling incredibly hopeful about the future.
It's an invitation to see the world in a new way, to notice the power of connection in everything we do, to understand that our shared humanity isn't just a nice thought, it's a fundamental truth. And when we embrace that truth, it has the power to change our world in profound and lasting ways.